Hi, my name's Julian Cundiff and welcome to my carp room. That's another letter answered, one of dozens I receive each and every week. Over the years I must have received thousands of letters from carp anglers. Why do carp anglers write to Julian Cundiff? Is he an expert carp angler? Is he a top carp angler? He certainly hasn't caught thousands of big carp. The reason why carp anglers write to me is that I give them confidence in their carp fishing. Years ago when I started carp fishing, I relied on people like Kevin Maddox and Rod Hutchinson to reply to my letters. When I got a reply from a person like that, I had the confidence to put into action the things that I'd been doing for months anyway. They'd tell me to use a certain bait. I was using that bait anyway, and I used that bait and I was full of confidence. And that's all these letters are. They are an envelope of confidence to the carp angler. The water I'm going to take you to is one of my local carp waters. It's not an easy water and it's not a particularly hard water. It's a water where I would say the average carp angler goes fishing. There are many good fish in the water and it's a typical carp water that many of you will aspire to fishing. Anyway, enough of all that. Let's go carp fishing with Julian Cundiff. Because carp fishing is so important to me, I have to get everything right. It's no good having the right rod, the right reel and the wrong choice of mainline, because that will cost me fish, the same as it will cost you fish. I've learnt over the last 10 years about some horrendous items of tackle that was guaranteed to catch me lots of carp. It never did. Learn by my mistakes. What I'm going to do is take you through my major items of tackle. I'm lucky. I can choose the very best. I only use the best. So I'll take you through the major items I choose and why I choose them, and a few little tips as well on how to keep those items performing correctly. We'll start with rods. The rods I'm using at the present are the Daiwa 3.5 pound test curve, the Infinity, the new Infinity rods. Now some of you will be thinking to yourself, a 3.5 pound test curve rod, surely that is far too strong. A lot of people think that hooks are pulled out by strong rods. Well, they can be pulled out by strong rods, but more hooks are pulled out by bad playing of fish. You're using a line with very little stretch, a large lead and a small hook. That will pull hooks out of fish if you don't use them correctly. This rod should be a lever, an extension of your arm to play the fish in. A 3.5 pound test curve rod allows me to cast 3 to 4 ounce leads very accurately. That accuracy will catch me lots of fish. The actual blank itself is a superb blank and it's long lasting. I expect to get 3 to 5 years out of that. One thing to take notice of, as they come, the line clips on most rods are too hard. They're too abrasion on your main line. That will actually cause your main line to part. Just use a standard line clip, cover it with tape and your actual main line will click in there and there'll be no damage. Another little extra I've put on this rod is this Velcro here. This Velcro will actually match the Velcro on my rear rod rests, and when I get a take, the rod won't be dragged off. Always keep your rod as clean as possible, for when you're casting out, any grime as your line slaps against the side of the rod, grime will actually cut down your distance when you cast. So just keep them nice and clean. You don't need to go to extreme lengths and polish them, just keep the grime and the muck off them. Always check the inside of the eyes to make sure they're not cracked. The high 10 style, and they can actually crack and that will actually cut down the distance. Excellent rods. Regarding reels, there are many good reels on the market nowadays. Shimano's, Daiwas, Ryobis, Dams. The most important factor in any reel is that the clutch works. That clutch must pay out line smoothly. With the strong rods that we're using and with the heavy leads that we're using, if that clutch does not work properly and pay out line, you will pull hooks out of fish. So no matter what reel you choose, you must make sure that clutch works correctly. To make sure that clutch works correctly, you need to keep your reels clean. Once a week, just take the spool off, wash it down with warm water and make sure you don't get any grit around the back of that area. That is where you undo your clutch, and if you get any muck, dirt or grit in there, then it will seize your clutch up. Again, you've got to look after them. Roller, make sure that's not caked in fish oils or it will not turn as smoothly. The second type of reel I use is a larger reel. This is a Dara emblem reel. Again, this is the reel that I use for very long range fishing or for when I'm casting out my marker float. Because a marker float is not very aerodynamic, you actually have to give it a bigger cast. With it being a bigger spool, it actually does go out further. Again, these are excellent reels. They are very expensive, but you don't need to buy these type of reels brand new. Look in the back pages of Angling Times, Carp Talk and Carp World. You'll find these at a third or half price second hand. Go and pick them up and they'll be just as good as a new one. This is my landing net. Now this is a Fox landing net, which is a nice lightweight landing net. If you look at the pole, that's a 5-foot pole. I used to advocate using the extending poles that went between 8 and 9 foot, but they really are too unwieldy, especially on your own. Notice the isotope here on the block. When you're drawing the fish in at night, you can actually see where the block is and how far you need to draw the fish in. Free flow mesh, sprung arms, and at the top of each arm there's a single strong isotope. By having an isotope in each corner of your landing net, you can actually draw the fish through the isotopes, the entrance of the isotopes. You draw the fish in towards the isotope on your block, and then you can net the fish a lot easier. I've seen far too many fish lost. In fact, I've lost good fish myself through poor netting. This stops that problem. So if your landing net hasn't got isotopes, make sure you put some in each corner. The actual rods themselves are housed in these rod sleeves. There's no need to cut your rigs off each and every time you go fishing. You can just break your rod into two and pop it in the rod sleeve. It saves you a lot of time and time off fish, especially in these summer days. And now for those interesting little things called tackle boxes. Every carp angler likes to look into another carp angler's tackle boxes to see exactly what he's taking fishing with him, and I'm no exception. The problem with all these boxes is that the more boxes you take, the more little bits and pieces you take fishing. These are all part of the Fox System Select, various boxes that fit inside each other. I take 2 large boxes. This box is full of all the matters that are used for end tackles. The leads, the tubing, the little Corda rubbers and the anti-tangle tubing. Now some people will say, why do you take all those leads? Well, sometimes I want to drop from a 4-ounce lead to a 3.5-ounce lead. Maybe I want to go to a flat lead instead of a flat liner lead. I might want to use a running lead. And if all these items are at home, I'm struggling. I'm going to start fishing inefficiently. So yes, it's a little bit more weight, but it allows me to fish efficiently. And here we have the chest of plenty. My double freezer, which I keep at home, which is absolutely full of boilies. There's probably some in the region of 20 to 30,000 baits here. Now I'm lucky now that I actually have my baits made for me. I'll get a few baits prepared for today. These little tubs, what I keep my hook baits in. They usually take about half a dozen to a dozen hook baits. You always need to have more than enough. I don't keep them after I've used them. In the summer months it gets very, very warm. The pop-ups will go slightly soft in these jars, and if you refreeze them they'll go even softer. I throw them away after I finish, so I've got some pop-ups ready and also some bottom baits. Because a pop-up looks exactly the same as a bottom bait, I put them in these separate jars. No point just putting a few in a plastic bag and hoping for the best. The worst thing that could happen is you cast out what you think is a bottom bait and it's actually a pop-up, or vice versa. It's going to make your presentation a waste of time. This little bit of planning well in advance will save you. I also have some freezer packs here. In the warm summer months I keep the boilies in a freezer box, even when I'm doing overnight sessions. Boilies are at their most effective when they are frozen. All these are frozen, but literally within a couple of hours in the warm sun, even in the evenings, they'll start to thaw. By keeping them in a freezer box with these freezer packs, it'll actually keep them rock solid and they'll be very, very effective. One thing about freezers you'll notice is you get this ice building up. You must not let your bait rest against the side of the ice or you get freezer burn, and it can take away the effectiveness. So keep your boilies inside these large plastic bags or paper boxes and it'll stop them getting the freezer burn. As well as the boilies in here, I also keep my Hinders A-mix. And the reason why you have to keep that in here rather than outside like normal ground bait is that because it's got liquids in it, it'll start to degenerate in the warmth. So keeping it in here keeps it nice and cool. Literally within an hour or two it'll start to break down, you can make the normal balls out of it. Anyway, enough of that, let's get fishing. I do try to take the minimum amount of tackle with me for these short sessions. In effect, I've got 12 hours of carp fishing. The last thing I want to be doing is lumbering around with gas bottles, televisions, bait buckets. Everything that I carry when I put in the carp, I can carry around the lake in one go. No messing about with lots of different little buckets. It's all in those 5 bags. Right, let's see if we can go catch a carp. Right, I'm at the water now. I never mind the car journey to the water, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours. It gives me a chance to get the old carp brain into gear. At home I may have 1001 things to do, 1001 things I haven't done, and yet on the road I can actually start to click into gear. I'm thinking about what I've got to do. Where will other anglers be? How many other anglers there will be here? Which way will the wind be blowing? What have the other anglers done? How much bait have they put in? It's all going into my brain. You can't just turn up at a water and think, I'll start thinking about my carp fishing now. That's far too late. You've got to use the journey for a good purpose. So even if you're stuck in traffic, keep thinking about what you're doing, about where you're going to fish. Don't make a definite decision about where you're going to fish. That's silly. The fish may have been there last week. They probably won't be there this week. They may be, you may be lucky. But don't make that decision until you get to the lake. I know some of the lakes are very crowded and it's tempting to get into your first swim, but that's not the way to do it. As soon as you turn up at the lake, probably the best thing you can do is go and ask other anglers if they've caught any fish. Usually, if you've been a good angler yourself and helped other anglers out, they'll help you out. So let's go and see if those other anglers have caught anything. That's good news. 1 or 2 fish is showing. There's not too many anglers on the lake. I think I'm going to have a walk round first, see which are the best swims. Andy's told me where he's seen a lot of fish showing, but I need to know for myself. So I'll lock the car up and let's have a walk round the lake. As you can see, I've got the white bucket with me to mark my spot. There's no point walking round and choosing a swim and then finding that you've got to go back to the car for your tackle and then you've got nothing to mark your swim. It's well known in carp fishing that leaving a bucket or a water bottle in your swim will mark that area. It also comes in quite handy for sitting and watching the water. Now let's have a look at a couple of these swims and see what the advantages and disadvantages are. The one thing about carp location is they've got to be here when I'm fishing. It's no good if these carp are going to be here tomorrow. I'm restricted to fishing between 6 o'clock in the evening and 6 o'clock in the morning. If those fish are going to be here in the day, that's a waste of time. Just think about when you're fishing. Don't just jump into the obvious hot spots. When are you fishing? What hours are you fishing? How much bait can you put in? You've got to pick a swim that's best for you and not best for the bloke who's a 3-day carp angler. Most carp waters will have swims that are fished day in, day out, day in, day out. It's very tempting to jump into that swim because it's a proven swim. But think about your fishing. Are you going to be here when the carp are picking the baits up? If the carp are picking the baits up at night time and you can only fish evenings, it's a waste of time. So I need to pick a swim where the fish are definitely going to be here during my stay. Let's look at here. Looking across there, you can see what looks like to be an island. Actually, that is a cut through. There'll be a lot of shallow water there, especially where the rushes are. Now in the day, that'll be an excellent swim because the carp will be moving between the lakes through the cut through, which is only 2 foot deep. Now the problem is at night, it's due to be a clear night tonight. Although it's red hot now, as soon as the temperature drops, the water will go a lot colder and those carp will not be in those areas. So they might well have been there at dinner time, but they're not there when I'm fishing at night. So that's not a good place to fish. Out in front of us here, we have what looks like open water. In fact, it is. I've visited this swim probably on half a dozen occasions when I've fished the water, and all we've got here is deep water. Now in the winter this is an excellent area to fish because the depth of water you've got 17 foot, but they're certainly not going to be here when I'm fishing in the summertime. As we look across there towards the end of it's like a long bar, you see the lilies, various patches of lilies. Now even if you've never fished this water before, you can see the lilies on the surface. That must tell you that that water is shallower than the water on each side of it. Now it's obvious the carp are going to be in those areas. The sun's beating down, carp like warmth on their backs, especially now there's a bit of wind on the water. As you can see there, the wind is just pushing through that, and that will excite the carp. Carp are attracted by wind movements. People say to me, why does wind attract carp? Well, it's not actually the wind that attracts the carp, it's his effect. When the wind is blowing into the shore, as so, it turns the bottom up. And as it turns the bottom up, it disturbs the natural food. And lots of disturbed natural food is an easy meal for the carp. Carp like easy meals. So you're looking for somewhere where the carp will be where you are and the wind is blowing into it. As you can see here, there's very little wind here. I'd be restricted to putting my baits on both bars. I don't think it'd give me 2 or 3 options during the night, so I think I'll walk around a little bit further. Yes, this looks more like it. Oh, yes. Now the thing about carp fishing is the effect that other carp anglers can have on the water. Now, if you look in this swim, there's no carp anglers here, so how could that have an effect? Well, look down there. Somebody must have packed up this morning, they may have had a fish, and they've obviously left some disturbed weed. The problem in the summer is that anglers tend to use far too many baits. I don't know what the angler who's been in here before me has done. He may have put 500 boilies out, he may have put 5,000. And unless this looks like it's the swim to fish, I'm not going to go in here. Somebody's obviously been in here beforehand, and I don't know what he's done. It looks good, but it's perhaps not quite the right swim today. Let's move on a bit further. This looks good. I bet plenty of you got spots like this in your lake. This is a swim that we call the Dead Tree Corner, and as you can see, it's absolutely chocker full of weed, lilies and natural food. I guarantee there's probably at least 15 or 20 carp in there, and if I was to put a bait out from here, in fact you can just see one on the surface there, just going through. If I was to put a bait out there, I'm sure I'd get a run. Now I'm not going to pick this swim for 2 reasons. Firstly, if I put my bait in there, there is no way in a million years I'm going to get the carp out of there. I'm going to hook it, I'm going to lose it. Secondly, if I actually fish the swim from next door and put the baits against the rope, I'm only going to be doing what everybody else has done for the last 5 or 10 years. Carp are not overly clever creatures, but they do learn by association. If a carp has been caught on one bait time and time and time again, it'll shy away from it. And similarly, if a carp has been caught in one area time and time and time again, it'll get very wary of that area unless it really wants to feed. Now in this swim, that rope is a magnet to the carp and to the carp angler alike. Everybody always fishes 3 rods against that rope. Now the carp have soon wised up to that, and unless there's a very strong wind blowing in here and actually exciting the carp to feed heavily, they won't feed against that rope. I'd have a bait probably inches from the carp, but at the end of the day I'm not going to get any runs. So it looks great, and I'm sure it is great, but with no wind blowing in here, I'm not going to try it today. So I'll have to leave this one alone. I think I'll make use of this as well while I'm here. Now, it's all right walking around the lake with your binoculars and your sunglasses, but you need to get to a certain height to actually look down into the lake. This is one of the 3 lakes' climbing trees. You can make good advantage of these by going up them. Let's see if I can get up this one. I knew that bucket had come in useful. Now one thing I should say to all you carp anglers out there, never ever climb trees unless you're particularly adept at doing it. A tree will give you an excellent vantage point, as this does, but I've seen people fall out of trees and injure themselves. If you're a youngster, if you may be overweight, or if you're not a good tree climber, don't climb up a tree. If you're any good at climbing trees, they are very, very useful. From up here I can actually look down into the water, and using my binoculars I can actually see quite a few carp bubbling round the island. Now it's not from this swim that I'm going to fish it, I'll have to try and fish it from another swim. With the sun high in the sky, it's only late afternoon, but it's actually lighting the water up. I can actually see into the water. I can see fish now that literally I was only stood feet from and I couldn't see. So make use of any climbing trees if you can find them. Right, let's have a little bit further. This certainly looks a good spot. In fact, it looks a very good spot. Again, problem is somebody else has been here before me. There's quite a few carp just there on the surface. You can see. Problem is they're only small fish, those. Looks like they're spawning as well. That can be a problem, is that what are feeding fish and what are spawning fish. Certainly looks a good area. Yeah, you can just see them bubbling away. Lots and lots of fish here. Certainly looks a place. I think I'll spend a little bit of time here with the binoculars and see if we can actually turn up one or two fish. Well, I've been here about 10 minutes now. I've looked quite extensively to the left and to the right, and all the fish have been to my right. There's probably about 20 or 30 carp, some into the doubles, the odd one or two just mooch around in this corner that are probably low 20s. The only thing that worries me about this swim is if we get a strong wind, it might push the fish through into the other lake. But bearing in mind I've seen very little fish action anywhere else, I'm only here for the night, so if I make a mistake it's only costing me 12 hours fishing. I think this is a spot to be in. Well, I'll live all four by that decision. Let's go get the tackle. I know people think I've got an easy time of it just doing these overnighters, but when you do 4 or 5 of these a week, you're absolutely exhausted by the time you get to the swim. I know I am. I certainly need a drink of something. And the problem is that many people, when they get to the swims, the last thing they want to do is settle down and think about the fishing. Now that's a mistake. All you're thinking about when you're on your way here is how soon am I going to get to the swim. The last thing you've got is your carp brain in gear. If I possibly can, I always like to spend 5 or 10 minutes just looking at the water and thinking about what I'm going to do. 10 minutes ago I was in carp mode. I knew where the fish were, I knew what my plan of action was. 50 yards into my walk I was tired, 200 yards into my walk I was exhausted, and about 50 yards from home I really didn't want to be fishing, so my brain is not on what it should be. I've got back to the swim now, I'm sat here, still fish showing, 1 or 2 moving about ready for the evening. I'm almost tempted to use a floater at the moment, but the sun's just gone in and oh yes, as you've heard there, a fish just topped on my right hand side in the pads. I really don't want to start taking them off the surface just at the moment. I've seen 1 or 2 areas that I fancy the fish. I'm just going to sit here for 5 or 10 minutes. I've probably got 2 hours of light before it goes dark and think about what I'm going to do. It's too obvious just to chuck one where the fish is shown. There's a lot of water in front of me here, and by the time I've got my carp brain into gear in the next 10 minutes, I'll know exactly where to put those baits and why. In the meantime, I think I'll have a Pepsi Max. This looks the ideal place to be. The last thing that I always make sure when I'm carp fishing is that my brain is in the right gear. Absolutely no point sat here thinking, I wish I was somewhere else, or I wish I wasn't carp fishing tonight, I really could be doing something else. Believe you me, I have plenty of other interests in carp fishing, but there are some nights when you just have to be here and carping. But there are other nights when your mind wanders and there's other things. Still, we can't think about those things. We're carp fishing, we're going to try and catch a few carp. Now looking out at the water, there's lots of visual signs out there. You've got the pads here, the clear gap in the pads, the cut through, the weeded areas. Now it'd be very easy for me just to pick up my carp rods and just to cast out and hope for the best. Now occasionally that would catch me fish. On a day like this when there's quite a few fish about, it may catch me more than one fish, but it's not the way to be a successful carp angler. The way to be a successful carp angler is A, to do your homework in advance. In other words, you should have some idea of the features there are here. It's a swim I've plumbed before, so I've an idea there is a big weed bed in the middle. That'll hold fish. These margins are very, very deep, but as you can see there are extensive areas of weed down there. I'm probably going to need to do a pop-up. Let's have a look at this marker setup. As you can see, we've got a lead on the end of the line. This is a 3.5 ounce lead. and attached to it is 16 inches of amnesia. That's a stiff link. We've then got the swivel, a knot, a bead to protect that knot, and a Drennan piker float. The important thing about this float is it's drilled centrally. As you can see, it moves smoothly on the line. Now when you cast out into the water, the lead will go first, and the marker float, because of its buoyancy, will go upwards until it reaches a stop. We drop down further. You can actually see I've got a stop knot. Fox Power Gum, a stop knot. I've set that stop knot at about 8 foot. Now in order to check the depth, you cast out the rod and see if the float pops up. If the float doesn't pop up, then obviously you've not set it deep enough. If the float lies on its side, you've set it too deep. So we'll have to experiment with that. Now you're probably saying, why on earth do you have to use this? Well, you imagine when that lead goes into the weed, there could be 6 to 10 inches of weed on the bottom. Think of that. You've still got your float above the surface weed. So your float doesn't get caught in that weed, it's still free to go up. That's ideal to use in very heavy weed. Now out there I'm looking at probably 6 or 10 inches of weed. That will get stuck in the weed, float can move right up to the surface. So that's an ideal marker rod for the weedy waters. A second marker rod is a traditional marker rod. Now the other marker rod has a problem in that every time you cast out, if it's not deep enough, you're going to have to rewind in, and if it's too deep, you're going to have to wind in and move the stop knot. Now that can take hours and hours, and obviously sometimes you haven't got those hours and hours. So what we're going to do is use a more traditional marker float. Again, we've got the lead, and I've covered the last 10 inches in float rubber, catapult elastic. Now the unusual thing about this one is that your lead isn't tied to the end of the line, the float is. So the float is at the end of the line and this moves up and down the line. Again, you've got the Fox run ring to allow the float to pop upwards. When you cast out, that goes into the weed. You tighten down until your float is held tight against that. You then pay the line off the clutch and the float goes upwards, as so, until you find the right depth. You calculate how much line you've paid out, and that is the depth of the water. You can then wind in and do it again and again. Now this is an easier way of plumbing, but the problem is that it's very easy for that to get filled with weed, for it to get tangled around like so. Once that fills with weed, the float won't pop up. The lead goes in at an angle, so you might think, well, I'm all right for 6 to 10 inches of weed. You're not. It goes in at an angle and that can get full of weed. So if your water is heavily weeded, this setup will not pop to the surface. If it's light with weed, this is ideal. Again, that's a Fox marker float, it's one of the new marker floats. Very buoyant, casts well because it's slim, very easy to identify due to the veins. On these short sessions, you can't afford to keep recasting every 10 minutes. You can't afford to put patches of bait here, there and everywhere. When you've decided that you're going to put your bait in a certain area and you've put the ground bait around it, or the boilies, or the particles or whatever, to then decide that you're going to put your bait on the far margin or to the left hand side means that you've got patches of bait all over the swim. The more patches of bait in your swim, the more chance that the carp are going to find those patch rather than your hook bait. You're cutting your chances down. So before you actually start casting out your baited end tackles, be absolutely sure that those are the spots. Are those the spots the carp are going to come into tonight? They may well be there now, but will they be there in 2 hours, 3 hours or 4 hours, or will they be moving away? I know that's easy for me to say, and I know it only comes from experience, but be absolutely convinced in your mind that those fish will be there tonight or when you are fishing. I'm sure those are the spots for me tonight, so I'm going to move on to setting up the shelter. Normally I'm a great advocate of putting in the rods first and setting up the shelter second. The problem with this swim is that we've got extensive areas of heavy weed. There's a large weed bed in the middle, there's lilies to my left and lilies to my right. It would be absolutely pointless putting the rods in first and then finding I had to set the shelter further back from the rods than I wanted. I want those rods and the shelter next to each other so that when I get a take in the middle of the night, yes, I am that confident, I'll be able to leap straight out of my shelter, pull into the fish and land the fish as soon as possible. The last thing I want to be having to do is run 5 or 10 yards to my rods. So I'm going to set the shelter up first and set the rods next to the shelter. The shelter I'm using is the Fox Ultra 50 shelter. It really doesn't matter what shelter you use as long as it's one that's not one of these huge ones. You want one that will actually fit into any swim, that will look after you and your tackle, will keep you waterproof and dry and blends in with the surroundings. Some of these very large tents are alright for fishing abroad, but when you're fishing in small cramped swims, I've known people actually not pick a swim because they can't get the tent in there. Absolute waste of time. You want a tent that will fit in anywhere, and this is the one. Having got my shelter into position, I obviously need to get my rods into position then. I'm using the Fox Micron DXR buzzers mounted on the dual bar. Rock solid, no chance of movement at all. I'll be fishing 2 rods tight to the right. I want the rods in there and I don't want that to move at all. If that is to turn over or fall, it'll cost me a fish and it may cost me a rod. So that is rock solid. I then get the rod over my shoulder and sort out the position I want that to be in. Normally I like to have my rod tips quite low, but because I'm having to fish over the pads, I'm just going to have a bit of height on that. That's about the angle there. Again, I get my rear sticks and find the position. Remember, we want the Velcro on the rod to match up with the Velcro on the rear butt grips. Rock solid ground, but because you can get pressure with the dual bars, you can actually push them in quite easily. When you've got them in a bit, always move your rod out the way, because if the ground goes soft and those go straight in, you'll end up cracking your rod. You can see there. We then have a solid setup. Screw those round. There is no way now, even on the most violent of takes, that my rod system is going to move. The rod will clip with the Velcro on there and there. On the hardest of takes, that's not going to move. It's stopped by the Velcro, but easy for the angler to lift it straight out. To complement the audible indication system, and that's your buzzer, I need a visual indication system as well, which is my monkey climbers or hangers or swingers. If you look at the floor here, grass, dirt, debris. I don't want my indicators to get caught in that, so I use what is known as a rod mat. You actually can't buy these anymore, but you can certainly make them easily enough. All you need, thick piece of carpet or whatever, little clip in each corner and a turn down tent peg. Now I know quite a few people laugh at this when they see it. When you think about it, what a jolly good idea. When that's down there, pegged in securely, then there's no way dirt can splash up onto your indicators, your visual swingers. Absolutely brilliant. So few people use these, and yet it'll actually cost you fish. If your indicator system gets covered in grime, or this gets solid and won't move, then you will miss a take and you could lose your rod. So make one of these, very easy. Now onto the visual side. Now, in today's carp world, there are hundreds, believe it or not, of different visual indicators. Monkey climbers, swingers, hangers, springers, whatever. I tend to just use one of 2, and that's either the Fox swing spring, which is in effect a swinger, which can be converted to a rigid arm springer. Again, you can see what my favourite colour is. It's this green. I use, for the sake of superstition, I always use green. Very easy. clips into there, screws in, and all you do is line it up. But as you can see, you don't need to take these off your buzzer. All you do is screw them in. If I was fishing at very close range, I would use these simple hangers, and again, just clips on there and hang down. But I'm fishing at about 20 or 30 yards, so I'm preferring to use this swinger with more of a balanced weight on it. Both are excellent ideas. I'll set all three up ready for fishing. Carefully undo it. As you can see, it's so much easier nowadays. We don't need to re-tie the rigs each and every week. Just a question of leaving the rig on, folding your rod in half and undoing it. Much simpler. No need to thread anti-tangle tubing. Just thread the rods together, and again, be very careful. Check for dirt, the end of each spigot, nice and clean. Put them together. Again, make sure the line's not twisted anywhere and nice and smooth to run. Always be careful that you lock these up carefully, smoothly down, so you don't cross thread. They need to be solid. I've seen actually people fishing and the handles fall off. Absolutely no need for that. And here's something that will save you a lot of lost fish in the years to come. As you see, the last, or you could call it the first 12 inches, are sheathed in anti-tangle tubing, a lead. You cannot see the knot at all. So what happens when your knot is moving? You can't see it. By simply pulling that out, you can actually examine the knot. As you can see from this knot, I only tied them last night, so it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with that. After each and every fishing session, I'd always be tempted to cut the line off and retie the knot. It only takes a minute or two. Also, just push that back. Just check the line in your fingers. No problem at all there. There's a hard plastic inner, and that actually can grate against your line. There's no problem. So retie the swivel. Make sure the line goes in nice and smoothly and securely, and pop it into place. And don't forget, when you're using an abrasion resistant line like Berkeley XT, to also coat it in rig glue. Always remember that when you actually do cut your swivel from your hook length and from your main line, that it will actually undo the twist, because every time you cast out, your line twists, and while the swivel is on there, although it swivels like that, it actually doesn't swivel properly in the water, and line twist builds up on your line, and that actually can cause your line to fail. By simply snipping off your swivel, it takes a line twist out, and again, that can save your fish. Just a little tip I've picked up. Luckily it's covered in weed, which might stop it scrapping so much, which is often a problem with these fish. As you can see, deep margins. Don't want it to go particularly to the right. Lots of weed on the bottom here as well. Still trying to get in that weed. I don't want it to do that. Unfortunately, got covered in weed early on and has now realised it's time to fight again. Lots of people say they like to play carp for hours on end. I have to say, I like them in the net. That doesn't quite want to go in the net yet, and I don't want it to go in those pads
either. And I don't want it to get in those pads because they are absolute sods. Even really good line like this XT, they will cut. Yes, it's in the net. Decent fish, yes. Lovely fish. Yes, we got ourselves a, whoa, I think we're talking about a 20-pounder there. Lovely scattered mirror here. Before I start handling it, I'll get my hands nice and wet. They don't like the touch of warm hands upon them, so it's nice and wet. Just a nice covering of water. Make sure it doesn't go down the gills, you don't want to drown them. Just enough to wet them. Remember, they're out of their environment. About 18 pounds, no need to weigh this one, but what a beautiful fish. Look at those scales. Again, when you're holding fish up for photographs, keep them nice and low. The higher they are, the more likely they are to flip out of your hands. Keep them nice and firmly, support their organs. It's a beautiful fish, this. About 18 and 19 pounds. Let's have a look at the other side as well. So it's worth, when you're photographing fish, keeping a record of both sides. Now this is a very distinctive fish, and you're probably not going to get two like this. Look at the colours there, yellow. Autumnal colours coming through there. He's not actually shed any bait. See how essential it is to have the landing net and the unhooking mat together. Stops it going anywhere. Again, nice and wet. Even got even got my kettle there for extra water. Again, look at that. Look at that. So he wants to shake free. Keep him nice and low, or her nice and low. What a lovely fish. About 18 pounds or so. Thank you very much. You've made my day. Isn't that a beauty? That's what we're doing it for. Nice and careful into water. Now then, bring your mum, or if he's a big male, your dad, and off it goes. It's getting on for 9 o'clock, the light's starting to fade, and odd fish are starting to show in front of me. I'll just take you through some of the precaution I've taken for the night. I've checked my buzzers and made sure they're working perfectly. Each buzzer is switched on. I've seen so many people switch the buzzers off and then forget to switch them on. A violent take and they lose the fish before they know they've got it on. I've checked that each rod is in the central holder and not likely to move. Indicators clipped on properly. Rear line clip. And as you can see, I've wiped the reel down. I've made sure the clutches are set perfectly, so if I do get a take at night, the rod's not going to go in, but there's sufficient pressure to stop the carp getting into the lilies. Each rod is held securely in the Velcro. That's not going to go anywhere. The last thing I'm going to do at night is put my own shoes on, tie them up and walk to the rods. I'm going to dash straight out when I get a take. I've got these cut down wellies here and it allows me to put my feet straight into these and not worry about having to tie my laces up. Sometimes I have to go in the water. I don't want to be getting into the water in bare feet, so these allow me to jump straight into them. Just cut down wellies or waders. I've got a torch here. I always use a torch for landing fish at night. Again, I'm blind as a bat, I need a torch to see where the fish are at night. I don't think it scares a carp, providing you don't shine it directly into their eyes. Shine it along the water and draw them into it. The landing net is positioned so that whether I get a fish on the left rod, the middle rod or the right hand rod, I can get hold of it. I've seen people put these in the bushes and on the wrong side, well down to the left hand side or the right hand side. They get a take and they're trying to pull the landing net out of the bushes, and that way they can lose fish. So make sure that the landing net is in the right position. The rods are tucked behind the bivvy, the spare rods, so they're not going to get stolen at night. As you can see from the sleeping bag, the zip is on the right hand side, so when I get a take at night I can burst straight out of it down to my rods. I use a Coleman stove for most of my fishing. Obviously in the next half an hour or so I'm going to fill the flask up. That'll be full to the top. That saves me having to get the Coleman going in the middle of the night, first thing in the morning. All that will save me time. And then I've got my little box of tricks here. Alarm clock, I'll set that for 4:30 tomorrow morning so that I'll be able to see any fish moving at first light. Spare torch, large torch, mobile phone if I get into difficulties, spare lighter, binoculars, glasses and the DXR box. Now what this is the remote that goes with the DXR buzzers. All you do is turn your buzzers down at night, switch this on to full, and it's a remote extension box. Absolutely brilliant. You can also walk a couple of yards up the bank if you're going to the toilet or whatever and not worry about getting bleeps on your rod and not noticing it. I'm sure I'm going to get a fish tonight, so I've prepared in advance. I've got the unhooking mat here and I've got the weigh sling. If I catch a fish, I want the fish up on here on the unhooking mat and in the weigh sling straight away. Sweeping across, I've got this set up for my camera. There's a lad further down the bank, but I don't really want to trouble him unless I have to do. Forceps, wire cutters, cloth. If I catch a carp in the middle of the night, I'm ready to deal with it straight away. I'm not messing about. All this planning will actually save you a lot of time in the long run. People say to me, well, what do you do now? Do you go to sleep? Do you start reading or whatever? No. The last thing you want to do is start reading magazines, chatting to other anglers, getting your head down for the night. You'll miss fish movement. Now at this time of night it's going to be very difficult for me to move on to fish, but it might tell me where they are tomorrow. So I'll stay up as late as possible and I'll get up as early as possible. Every last minute, every last hour is essential for fish viewing. So let's get back to the water and watch for those fish. 9 o'clock at night, just getting dark. About 10 minutes or so, I've picked up a fish. Looks like a small common, probably somewhere between 8 and 10 pounds. There was obviously running out of light, and you can actually see the boil in the carp's mouth. What I did is I just snipped the trace off, tied a new one on. I'd already got the bait balanced and cast it out. Took no more than probably 3 or 4 minutes. That way I've got the bait in position before the light's fallen. The carp's in the landing net. All I need to do, take it up the bank, unhook it. I don't think we'll bother with a photograph, but no harm to the carp at all. And we've got the baits in the position to see if we can catch another one tonight. So let's just unhook her, take her up the bank, take the hook out, and we're still fishing. Straight in the bottom lip that. A confident feeder, that's an overshotted pop-up. Very, very secure hook hold. Forceps round it, tease it out, dead easy. It's a lovely fish, just put those out. Look at that, what a gorgeous little common. And who's to know, in 10 years time, that might be a 20 pounder. Again, absolutely scale perfect. A lovely fish. Come here. Oh, it's another, believe it or not, it's another common. It's another common. Here you go. Oh, you won't have it. Get in. Very secure hook hold. Let's get the... One thing you have to be careful with when unhooking fish is you grab the hook with the forceps. 2 commons in one night out of the 4 or maybe 5 that are in this lake. Unbelievable. Lovely paddle on it. It's fighting more now than it did in the water. There we go. Ooh. 6:15, just before I'm about to pack up for work, and I've hit another fish, very strong fighting fish. Picked it up on that rod I recast this morning towards the pads. Just goes to show that you never can tell when you're going to get another take. Always worth very strong fighting in the margins. Problem with this water is they are deep margins, full of weed. As you can see, the fish know exactly where to go when you've got a take. Now, I'm going to use my common sense and try and lead it in. Clearly I don't want it to go to the right hand side. It's very heavily padded on the right. Again, it knows where those snags are. Always keep down out of the skyline when you're playing fish. As you can see, if you get too far up, it scares and spooks the fish, which is the last thing I want at this stage of the fight. Quite a nice fish. Almost ready for the net, but not quite. Picking up bits of debris, but still not ready for the net. And I'm just getting a boot full of water here, but never mind. Obviously this bit of rain has persuaded the carp that perhaps it was time to feed. Still wants to be in those pads. The clear water, of course, in the day doesn't help you with netting fish, in that your landing net stands out terribly. The carp can see it and can see you. It's still quite a strong fish. Weakening a bit now. I'm managing to turn it every time it gets towards the pads. Come on, in you go, and into the net. Well, we have a nice fish. And good double, possibly even a 20-pounder. Unfortunately, I'm going to be very wet on the way home to work. The important thing is we didn't lose the fish. Nice fish. Good thing about these landing nets, you don't need to mess about. Over, clip. Landing net pole out of the way. We're ready to lift the back fish up to the unhooking mat. Oh, that's a nice fish. Nice mirror. See how important it is to have the net already here. Forceps, cutters if necessary. Let's see what we've got. Yep, a beautiful mirror. That's well hooked. You can see it's a pop-up and the fish is taking it into the back of the throat there, and what we need to do is use the forceps. Now, I've seen too many people try and wiggle hooks out without forceps, but see how easy that was with forceps. Before you pull the lead from under a fish, always make sure you know exactly where it is. That line is still caught around the fish. The last thing we want to do is pull it and take a scale off the fish. There we go. Always be careful that you put your baited rig out the way. Got a fish there, probably not quite as big as I first expected. I would expect that to be about 15 or 16 pound. It's a nice fish, beautiful condition. You can see how it's been grubbing along in the bottom there. Its mouth darkened, been caught once or twice before. In fact, it was hooked in the bottom lip not so long ago. Lovely condition fish, absolutely beautiful yellow colours there. And I think we'll just get our friend next door to do a picture. No need to weigh this. It's about 15 or 16 pounds. I'll just put it in the side with the landing net and get our friend to do a few pictures next door for me. Again, as soon as they've had a bit of time to recover, they want to start fighting you, as this one does. There we go. Imagine what they're like after they've been sacked up overnight. No wonder we ban sacks. There we go. I always take probably 2 or 3 of each side to make sure I've got one absolutely spot on. And a couple of horizontals as well. Doesn't harm them keeping them out of water for a couple of slides, as long as you're careful with them. This fish is nice and wet. We'll do the other side as well. We've got a nice record to see how big this fish grows. I'm sure this one day will grow to be a nice fat 20 pounder. And there we have the end of the session. That's what it's all about. A nice healthy double. There it goes. To live and fight another day. Another nice fish and the end of a session. Again, looks quite easy, doesn't it? I've done nothing different than you can do. Have a great time. Hope you enjoyed it. See you soon. Tight lines.